Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm Daniel Torres, and accompanied by my partner in crime, Christina Nicolau. What's up, Christina?
Hi, Daniel. I'm doing well, back from vacation, good time at the holidays, and now full on this week.
Exactly, yeah. It's been an interesting one coming back. I forget every time I come back from holiday, I forget what it's like to get your brain reprogrammed. Talking of which, getting things reprogrammed, we're in a new social network, Instagram. You're probably there too. So please follow us there. Please, and you'll get benefits because you'll get our usual content. So every new episode we release, maybe a reminder of old episodes as well. But you'll get exclusive behind the scenes materials, which you won't find anywhere else but on Instagram. And plus, you can have direct communication with us. You can send us DMs with feedback, ideas. You can tell us how good we are and more, whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, so just go ahead and enrich your feed with a little bit of FMCG wisdom and industry insights.
Exactly. And if you want to share our post on your stories, we give you permission to do that. So let's go into today's topic, Christina, which is something that I suspect, know more about than I do, which is revenue management. It's been growing quite a lot in the last few years, hasn't it?
Oh, yes, it has. I'm very excited that we finally get someone to talk about it. I guess in most of the organizations, it will be referred to as RGM, Revenue Growth Management. And it feels like it was something that was a little bit being done across different parts of different functions. And now it's coming together as a separate function with a lot of focus on how to drive sustainable growth.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was speaking to someone today who's heading up Europe for a big consumer goods company, and I asked him, what type of hires he's doing this year, and he said, of course, like everyone, I'm hiring in revenue growth management. So why has that become so strategic in FMCG companies, and maybe in your day-to-day job, Christina? How do you see it come into play?
Well, I would say it's all about providing the shopper, because in that case, you're mostly talking about the shopper rather than the consumer, which would fall mostly under marketing, with the right product at the right price, in the right pack size, serving the right occasion, right? So, and their category and channel comes into play as well. So it's actually the essence of what has been done in the past, a little bit intuitively, perhaps sometimes, perhaps with a combination of a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales, a little bit of finance, nagging people about how this is impacting their P&L. But right now it's a lot more focused on what the shopper needs and how I am going to serve them in the best possible way, and at the same time creating more value for the category and the customer as well. So it only makes sense that if companies are now more focused on the sustainable growth part and really understanding what it is that is working when it comes to their products beyond just a very powerful brand, the focus would be behind RGM.
Okay, so, we're lucky enough to be accompanied by someone who's been referred to me as one of the experts in the function. His name is Gustavo Mendonça. He works at Kraft Heinz, recently relocated to North America, but he's been working heavily in revenue growth management and specifically in its confluence with digital transformation. So he's here to talk about revenue management, especially in the food space, but as well how the function's rapidly changing and what revenue management needs to look like or will look like in the next few years.
I'm Gustavo Mendonça. I'm the head of digital transformation for revenue growth management at Kraft Heinz, and it's a pleasure being with you all today.
Thanks, Gustavo, for joining us in our first recording of the year. So very excited about that. Not the first episode that will be released this year, but this is the first one being actually recorded in 2024. Gustavo, can you tell us more a bit about your role? Was this actually a new role? And maybe you can tell us a bit about what your prior one, and later we can maybe go a bit into your career. But for now, yeah, we're interested to know what you're going to do now and what you've been doing in the last couple of years.
Right. So I think my new role reflects a big change in the industry post, I guess, pandemic, with a lot of companies investing more and more in technology. So in 4 or 5 years ago, I started to work in revenue growth management at Kraft Heinz, and at that point in time, we were doing everything that we could in terms of price promo optimization in Excel, right? Using spreadsheets and trying to derive the insights manually. With the whole digital revolution, we started to invest more and more in technology. So that's basically what changed my career and the pivot that I made because then I started to focus more on understanding where we had these gaps and where technology could help us in the revenue growth management space, and then developing these tools aligned with the business unit to then make sure that we drive adoption of these tools and we capture value. So it's still revenue growth management, but right at the intersection between commercial and technology.
Great, and we will get a bit more into the details of what that is, but tell us a bit about your journey and how you got here. You're a finance guy, also with very interesting academic background. So tell us a little bit about your career path.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. So as you mentioned, I was very academic, kind of academically oriented in early on in my career. I wanted to be a central banker, actually. So I studied economics, statistics, have a master's degree, very theoretical master's degree in economics. So trying to prepare myself to work in the financial markets. So I actually became an economist, worked in banking for a few years, became a chief economist and a partner in a small hedge fund based in Brazil. But then in 2013, the economy was really in really bad shape in Brazil. So I wanted to move abroad. At the same time, I wanted to experience different things. Have been working in the industry in financial services for a long time. Decided to go to business school in the US, and then during business school had exposure to different industries and different roles. And then at that point in time, we as a family, my wife and I, made the decision to move to London, and I had an offer to come to work for Kraft Heinz, and I didn't really know what I was gonna do. So initially I worked in rewards. Was a moment that we were doing a lot of restructuring in the company. So I guess my economist background helped a lot. Then I moved to the commercial finance space, which is kind of revenue growth management, and then the roles that led to this more current role, which is the digital transformation type of area.
Yeah, which Kraft Heinz, AB InBev, companies with 3G behind them have this very unique career path of onboarding MBAs into their business, which some people that don't have any consumer goods background, they're very good at onboarding them. And I think that you're a living example of that being very successful career-wise as well.
Yes, that's an interesting point. It happens quite often in our company, and I think ABI is also a very good example. We like to hire MBAs, people that are problem solvers, and are just aligned with the culture, but not necessarily understand the industry yet. And we just like to put these people in uncomfortable positions, right? Getting them out of their comfort zone. So in my example, I was in the hedge fund industry. They put me in HR to be in charge of rewards, and we had multiple examples in the company. We have a product owner now in my team who was also in the financial services industry before. We had people who come from tech and go to marketing and operations and go to finance. So we do this a lot, especially with MBAs, which I think helps a lot to kind of get different perspectives across the company and develop people with multiple different types of skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's very interesting because, again, it's quite unique to these two businesses. What about revenue management? So you've been in this function for a number of years. If you had to boil it down to a simple definition, how would you define revenue management, or how would you say it to a friend in a bar?
Yeah, so the way I explained to my mom is we are responsible for getting the right price and the right promotion strategy and with the right portfolio of products. So that's kind of the goal. And if you want to be a little bit more like talk a little bit more the language of the street, we try to grow the business in a sustainable way.
And this has always been kind of like part of what businesses do, I guess. But I remember also throughout my career when I started P&G, no one was really talking about revenue management or RGM, whatever. And then I went into Diageo, and there was NRM at that point, which was net revenue management, which then evolved into RGM. And now at Coke, it's all about RGM, right? So how do you see the influence of that function now being separate, growing within the industry, and how the focus has shifted towards that part for the sustainable growth, as you mentioned?
Yeah, it's been a shift, as you said, because I think in the past, there was a lot of there was a little bit of confusion with some aspects of RGM sitting with sales, some parts of RGM sitting with marketing, some parts sitting with finance. So, which was, as a result of that, we had companies not having their pricing strategy aligned with the brand strategy, with execution, with what the retailers want, especially if you are a supplier, right? So centralizing the function and having this cross-functional powerhouse actually working alongside the different functions, finance, sales, and marketing, and actually with supply chain as well, right? I think it helped us to focus a lot, to understand the brand's strategy, to understand the challenges we have from an execution point of view, the challenges we have from an operations point of view, and then build a holistic strategy that takes into consideration these different angles, as opposed to before having people doing these different things in silos and not necessarily connecting together.
Are you a savvy consumer insight professional with an interest in AI applications and market research? Discover BullChat AI, the pioneering AI-powered qualitative consumer research platform that's reshaping the consumer insight landscape. Picture this scenario: effortlessly connecting with your target audience, posing bespoke questions, and receiving insightful responses to address your business queries, all neatly compiled into an actionable report within a mere 24 hours. BullChat AI streamlines the research process, enabling you to make agile, well-informed decisions at a fraction of the conventional cost. Curious to experience the efficiency firsthand? Visit www.bullchatai.com and embark on your free trial today.
And Gustavo, like pricing strategy and architecture are really like critical for any brand or organization more widely. When you have to decide a price of a product, because it's probably something I don't really think of. I think, like the branding, the packaging, if you like, but how do you decide something as simple but critical as the price of a bottle of ketchup?
Yeah, there are multiple angles, right? And I think that's why digital is becoming so important, because a human really can't take into consideration all these different variables all at once. But in the past, we used to focus a lot on cost. So basically, a lot of companies like ours were applying a cost plus model, right? So you see what your inputs cost, and then you try to manage your margin, right? So big example is now in the last couple of years when inflation went up, particularly materials, but also a little bit of labor inflation. Our products became more expensive to produce, so we had to increase prices to keep the same level of margin. Actually, in some cases, we actually have to dilute our margins, because then goes the other parts of the equation, which is what's our brand strategy, right? So do you want to be very premium in some categories, which means our price will probably be always at a certain level above the competitors, or do you want to drive market share and be more competitive? What is our channel strategy? Do you want to be tapping into different channels? So that's a consideration as well. So it might be more aggressive price wise in some channels, just because we want to drive our presence there. What is what's our shopper willing to pay for our product? So that's probably the most important variable for us, right? So we don't want to price products in a way that our shoppers are not willing to buy our products. So those are the main variables. And lately, I think a lot of companies have experienced some success also thinking in terms of pricing to the right pack to the right occasion, right? So thinking about if I want to drive a different occasion, like a more convenient, fast experience, what is the type of pack that I need? And that would also drive the price that could be completely different than the price of a different pack in a different level, in a different occasion.
And I guess it would also be served most probably through a different channel, perhaps, even thinking about convenience versus hypermarkets, or even when you have something that's being consumed on premise versus something that is meant to be consumed at home. So it will definitely have a completely different price of person. I guess this is why you guys exist, right? To do this analysis.
Yeah.
And
yeah, and just a disclaimer. At the end of the day, we do analysis, right? So what is the shopper willing to pay? What's the right strategy for the category? But price is the sole discretion of the retailer, right? Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, the retailer will decide. From a shopper point of view, they decide what the price of the products will be. So to your point, and usually what we see is that in convenience stores, the retailers sometimes they charge a different price because of the convenience, right? And sometimes they want to drive a different strategy. They want to drive footfall, and they will be more aggressive and give more discounts, right? And sometimes this conversation is always two ways. Sometimes the retailer will come to us and say, "Hey, there is a big event here that's happening, and we think that aligns with your strategy and our strategy and the strategy for the category, and we can work together on a plan on how everybody wins, the shopper being at the center of it, but also the supplier, us, and the retailer."
And I guess the consumers, the shoppers, I should say, probably have become even more sensitive when it comes to promotions. In the last decade, perhaps we see also in FMCG even 1+1 for free promotions and very aggressive high lows, together with some EDLP happening in some other retailers depending on their strategy. So, from your point of view and from RGM point of view, how do you decide on what is an effective promotion strategy and what is the suggestion that you would like to make to the retailer?
Right. So we have these beautiful tools, right, to tell us what is the incrementality of each promotion, which is probably the main breakthrough that we had in the area. Mm-hmm. We as Kraft Heinz, we had in the area in the last 4 years. We built in-house a tool that estimates the incrementality of every single promotion from a shopper point of view, from a retailer point of view, from our point of view as Kraft Heinz, taking into consideration the cannibalization of that promotion, because sometimes you see a big uplift, but what's happening with the rest of my portfolio? Because if people are just buying more of the large bottle of tomato ketchup to the detriment of the small bottle, I might be losing money because the small bottle has a higher price per kilo, right? So we take into consideration that, we take into consideration consumers anticipating consumption, so what we call stockpiling, and we take into consideration retailer switching, because if you run a promotion in, let's say, in Tesco in the UK, does that mean that the Sainsbury's or the Asda shoppers, other big retailers in the UK, will run to Tesco to buy into those promotions? To some extent, they do that, right? So we take that into consideration. So every single promotion, what we call the guidelines and guardrails, is decided taking into consideration our past experience and what we expect for the future using those tools, right? So it removes a lot of the guesswork, and then we present those findings to our partners, the retailers. Say, hey, look, this promotion actually is making you lose money as well, right? Because it's not. And sometimes we can't even deliver because sometimes the promotion is so aggressive that it creates all sorts of problems in the supply chain as well to deliver those products, and which means that the shoppers themselves have a bad experience, right, with the promotion.
Yeah, because it is the pipeline of stock for like a 3-day very high promo event is very difficult to manage, and not just for you guys, like I guess delivering to a distribution center, but then the retailer needs to have the capability to support this so that they offer their shoppers the optimum experience.
Exactly.
So it's all about the incrementality, the volume of deal, and the switching between brands, switching between retailers, and overall cannibalization in the portfolio.
Yeah, so we take all this, we estimate all these variables, and we come up with a simple measure, which you call the net ROI. So every deal, every promotion will have a net ROI, a net return on investment. So if the net return on investment is positive with some buffer, it tells us that that's a good deal that we should probably continue to do, right?
Oh my God, so much complexity behind the promotions I see every day in the supermarket. I mean, hearing you guys talk, since you're in the weeds every day in one way or the other, is pretty amazing. What about when, like, there's another significant line in profit and loss, which is the retailer investment or trade expenditures. How do you like team up with the sales team to ensure that like negotiations and money invested in clients translate into sustainable growth through effective negotiations?
Yeah, this is a critical area as well, right? We haven't we partner a lot with the sales organization, as you mentioned, usually providing the analytics behind the business cases, right? So when we want to launch a new product, so what is the margin of that product? What's the price that we're going to sell that product to the retailer? So we need to present that business case. So we support our sales organization, we as Revenue Growth Management, in providing the analytics brain power to put these cases in front of the retailers, right? And even in yearly negotiations, and when it comes to very strategic changes that we need to renegotiate a big contract in a very important brand product. Sometimes we need to have our VP of Revenue Growth Management really going there and talking to the Walmarts, the Krogers of the world to explain, listen, this is the rationale. This is why we think this is the margin that we should have. We should guys collect feedback and start this negotiation process. That's, I think, the next frontier for us in digital, because I think we haven't cracked that code yet in terms of digital tools to enable a more seamless experience. It's still pretty much, if you think about the way we were doing analyzing promotions and building promotional plans in the past, very Excel driven. This is still how we operate in terms of trade investment, but I think this is about to change in the next couple of years.
And I guess that's the other aspect of the value that the functions in RTM can bring to a company, right? Because one part has to do with how do I optimize the effectiveness when it comes to the shopper, but the other part is how do I actually bring value to the customer? Because you're creating a lot of value for them when you're able to provide them with those insights and have those capabilities, seeing what's happening across markets, which they cannot. So I guess it's like a very good sales point, just being able to show them the tools that you mentioned, right? Have you seen that difference happening once you've introduced those tools?
Yeah, 100%. Because in terms of promotion, I think we're getting being recognized by our partners as experts in promotion evaluation. So I think they're more and more trusting more and more on the insights. But the other aspect of your question that I think super interesting is we are the specialists in a few categories, right? So tomato ketchup, mac and cheese,
Yeah.
right? So we're really in the UK beans. So we're very big in those categories. So really the experts in the categories. So the retailers, our partners, they also expect us to come with the insights about the category, right? So and some of the tools that we're developing now are meant to solve answer some of those questions in a more digital, structured, standardized way, right? To say what will happen with my P&L, the retailer P&L, and the shopper if I change the portfolio. Right. So if I remove some products that are not really driving a lot of value, right? They're not really incremental, very low velocity. If I add other volumes or other products, what does this volume go? And we want to partner with retailers to provide these insights as well. Not that they don't have a lot; they have a lot of data, right? So Walmart, they have a lot of these insights. But in some categories, we are really the specialists, so we can deliver more insights than they would get from their own, because they don't quite understand the category, the trends, and our plans for the category. Since we drive the category growth, we can partner with retailers to drive category growth in a lot of these categories.
So I guess having the category captainship in a way comes with a certain level of expectations. And then it's also an added value that you can bring that's also being appreciated and recognized by your partners. And you said you're developing a lot of digital tools. We said that RTM is something that's gaining more and more influence in a lot of companies. And I'm sure that there's a lot of Excel work happening across the globe as we speak. So how is digitizing those tools for working for you? What are the challenges that you're facing? Tell us a little bit about the roadmap and the journey you're on.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can spend another podcast, another hour talking about the challenges.
We can make time.
So I think one thing that comes to mind is time, right? Because to digitize these tools, it takes some time. It takes some investment. So we need to put some dollars behind. It's not something simple. So how do you drive this engagement with the business units, with the business leaders, the stakeholders, the CFOs of the world, to say, hey, it's really worthwhile investing $1 here. You're gonna lose $1 this year, right? Nothing is gonna happen, but in 2 years, this dollar is gonna produce $20, which actually happens in practice, which is what happened with our promotion evaluation tool. But that challenge of can you believe that this is gonna end up being net incremental to the P&L and have the patience and the discipline to go after it? That's the main challenge, and that involves getting the leadership alignment, getting the users alignment. These things need to work hand in hand, and having a very disciplined team to then deliver on the commitments.
And specifically like tools, for example, like AI? Are they having like an impact already on revenue management?
They are, and I think the AI raises all the types of questions, right? Because AI is very data hungry, so our data needs to be. It doesn't have to be pristine, but it has to be of decent quality. So the more we toy with AI, the more we find that we need to invest on data quality and just on data gathering, acquiring new data sources, which is why we have so many data companies now in the world. There is a big proliferation of data companies as well, right? Selling different data sources because everybody wants to do artificial intelligence. And the other challenge, obviously, with AI is security, right? So we have an AI governance security council as well. I think all the big CPG companies, all the big companies, I would say, today will have one. So because there's a big concern that data is being used, strategic data is being used and can leave the premises of the company. So everything we do from an AI point of view has to go through a very length process to make sure that we take into consideration all these variables and we develop these tools in a very safe environment.
So if I'm trying to summarize what we've said here for our listeners who are kind of like embarking on this journey, you would say that in order to start digitizing all those tools and utilizing AI and all that, you need to ensure you have the right data coverage with the right quality, ensure security, and have the right governance in place. And then you need to find kind of like your reason to believe in order to have the buy-in from the leadership, from the users, and a very disciplined team to execute this, as it does take a lot of time. Did I get this correctly?
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yes.
Perfect. And how, if you think of like revenue management as a function, how do you see it evolving as a whole in the next, I was going to say 5, but that's probably a bit too far-fetched, next 3 years?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very different because of this digital revolution, and not just revenue growth management. I think a lot of functions like demand planning will change completely because everything is becoming more automated, right? So I think my dream would be to have people working in revenue growth management that can extract the insights and really engage with these tools in almost like a data scientist themselves.
Okay.
Because the whole experience that I think we can provide by building this tool will change even the skill sets that are needed to perform the function. In the past, it's like you need to be very good at Excel and PowerPoint, right? And that would help a lot to give you a head start and to be a star in revenue growth management. I think in the future, those capabilities are not necessarily important. It will be much more important to understand machine learning models and what happens with in a little bit in the back end, the data sources, what happens when data goes from A to B. How do you go about changing the models? How do you go about changing the user experience, the user interface? Right. So again, not just revenue growth management. I think a lot of functions will be more about thinking about the insights and what happens behind the scenes with the models, because you're going to have a lot of the models, as opposed to trying to build a model every time you need to generate a new insight.
So just to connect a little bit this with your background, Gustavo, you have the very finance background. What would you do something differently if you were starting now studying? You would go more into CS, for example, computer sciences, or would you just still go into an MBA and then just try to educate on the side yourself? What is your advice for people who want to get in this space?
I had enough exposure to coding and because I studied statistics and economics, and you had a lot of classes that you can develop that. I think I probably, and even in business school you have this. I probably wouldn't change the trajectory in terms of the degrees and the fields that I studied, but I would definitely have coded more. I think learning how to code today is very, very important. It's something that I'm starting to tell my 6-year-old son. Like, there's one thing that you need to learn. You need to learn the concepts of math, etc. But at some point, you're gonna need to learn how to build a computer, right? That is a very, very important skill set for the next, I think, many, many years to come.
This was Gustavo Mendonça from Kraft Heinz. Christina, what are your key takeaways from this conversation about revenue management?
I would say that at the beginning we discussed about how it's changing in terms of RGM being way more strategic and more in focus, but it's also changing a lot, I guess, in terms of it being less Excel-based and more into developing digital tools that can not only create efficiencies, but rather help the companies grow and bring incrementality in their growth.
Yeah, but it's interesting, like how much the implication of doing a promotion in one supermarket, like through like cannibalization and so on, what's the impact that it can have on the overall portfolio. So to be able to boil things down as much as possible must be really helpful, no?
Oh, of course it is. And when you look at the total business compared to having just a key account manager who's looking for at the specific retailer, you get to see, as Gustavo was mentioning, like how big is the volume on deal? Like, do I make these big promotions and then end up cannibalizing on other parts of my business and therefore kind of like ruining the health of my P&L? Or you also see this switching happening between retailers. So if I am a key account manager and I'm working on a very specific promotion that I think it's going to go great. And then another part of our business handled by a different key account manager is just falling because people are switching. This doesn't make sense if you're not able to actually have the whole picture at once and really understand what's the impact of the decisions you're making when it comes to the promotion, when it comes to the pricing and the portfolio, with the caveat, of course, that pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer.
Yeah, that's an important caveat. Actually, one thing that I thought was interesting as well, not necessarily about revenue management, but in general, was the fact that he talked about like how as category leaders, retailers are expecting them to come with the insights and they're actually driving that category up to some extent.
I guess being a P&G alumni here, alumnus. Anyhow, the point is that there has always been a lot of focus on how you can create value for the category and for your customers with your brands growing and winning within that, right? And the customers do have that mindset. They expect you, when you're the leader, when you have the category captainship, to come there and be able to provide further insights on how to help them grow their business, how to do this in the most sustainable way. And that's what RGM does. I guess they will always have their own objections because they have their margins to protect, but they're looking to you for that kind of guidance. And when it comes to smaller retailers also, this brings a lot of value because they might not be able to have the tools. Not everybody's Walmart.
Yeah. And on another note, we talked about like the future, where he talked about revenue management being much more about models, machine learning. What are your takeaways there? You probably can read better into this.
Well, of course, he mentioned a little bit about how all those models and AI or machine learning, all those buzzwords, these are models that are very much data hungry, as he mentioned, and he's very right. So you really need to be able to have that kind of data in order to analyze it. But that's not enough, because we know that data can be chaotic and you need to have the right way of organizing it and analyzing it. And that actually requires a lot of work, and it requires a lot of time and money investment from the company. And that's where it becomes hard. So how do you get that buy-in and give that reason to believe to all the stakeholders within the organization so that they can have the patience and give the investment now to see the results in a year?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what about the career advice? What did you think of that? It's the first time we get it, so.
It is the first time we get it. I do believe that it's not going to be the last time. We do see that having the understanding more of how machines work, how a code works, is going to become more and more of a prevalent need when people are scouting, I guess. And you might have more to say on this one, Daniel, but for sure you need people who are able to understand where the data is coming from, how it's getting organized, as we mentioned, and then how to read it, and not just have people who are creating really good, powerful slides on PowerPoint.
No, it's gonna be interesting because that's one school of thought. Like, will like STEM like abilities be necessary, like coding, for example, or maths and so on? There's another school of thought which I think is interesting that says that they'll need more humanities and social sciences graduates, because there a lot of times you develop the skills of seeing patterns, critical thinking, that are also very interesting. So we'll see how that evolves. I'm pretty quizzed by it.
Yes, I am as well. And you're very right that these are two different kind of schools, but they also kind of like get together, because it's not so much, I would say, of being able to write code, but it's really about understanding how all these things that are going to be more and more important in our day-to-day jobs, how do they work and how you can make decisions. Interestingly enough, I am in strategy. As you know, I'm an architect. Actually, I'm an engineer. And I would say there's a pretty good amount of people, a percentage of people in the strategy team in Europe that have engineering degrees. So I would argue that it's more about the way of thinking and the way that you can structure your thought rather than having the hard skills to sit down and code.
Yeah. So we'll see how that evolves. But also at the same time, being hands-on can be an interesting one. Thanks, Christina, for your takeaways as always. And thank you for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode every Wednesday and every Saturday of the FMCG, guys. Have a great day.